What is up, guys? Mircoswitch back here with another video, and today I'll be showing you guys my EMG SR16 build. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So for the externals of the gun, I didn't really do much, just a few attachments here and there. At the back of the gun, I have a rubber band to hold the 2-point sling in place, just in case I decide to use one. We also got an 11-1 LiPo strapped to the stock of the gun, because I do not have a buffer tube LiPo, which this gun requires because it does not have a crane stock. We got a QD sling mount for mounting my slings. We have a Replica EOTECH, which is not an actual EOTECH, it's just a red dot that looks like an EOTECH. Right there. And it's also got green. At the very front of the gun, I have a $5 flashlight electrical tape to the gun. And that's about it for the externals. So for the internals of the gun comes stock with an Aries EFCU gearbox. In the gearbox, it has a magnet sensor, which detects when the gear comes around, turns on the active braking in the motor, and stops the gun firing in semi-auto. And in full auto, when you hold the trigger and right when you let go of it, it turns on the active braking in the motor and stops the gun. For the parts, I've replaced the stock motor with a Matrix high torque motor, which honestly isn't that much high torque since it's only 16 or 18 TPA. I replaced the stock gears with SHS 13:1 gears, and I replaced the stock bucking with a G&G Green Bucking. And for all the parts I've kept stock, the gearbox, of course, that sweet MOSFET, the whole compression parts of the gun, like all of them, the piston, and the inner barrel, which is, I believe, a 603 Tightbore barrel, and also the hop-up chamber. I did not have to replace the hop-up nub with a better one, since this gun doesn't actually use a hop-up nub, and the hop-up arm itself acts as the hop-up nub. And for all the other mods I did to the gun, adjusting the motor height, shimming the gun, pretty decent job since I'm only a beginner tech, if you can even call me a tech. Correcting the AOE, shortening the trigger pull, and precocking. I did the precocking by taking the magnet out of the stock gear, sector gear, and putting it in the new sector gear. So usually you have the magnet in the gear, you pull the trigger and it stops, and the gearbox has the spring non-compressed in its resting stage. But I moved the magnet about the middle of the gear when you pull the trigger, and it reads it when the active braking turns on. The piston's like halfway cocked, so it's precock. That's essentially what precock is. I didn't do it all the way precock, since that would be too much stress on the gearbox, and I usually forget to turn off the precock or take the spring out or hit the anti-reversal latch. And now to show you guys the internals. Alright guys, we got the gearbox open, and for the parts I kept stock are the cylinder and the cylinder head, the tap plate and air nozzle, the anti-reversal latch, the bushings, the spring guide, and the trigger. And of course, I kept the gearbox and the Aries EFCU, and also I kept the inner barrel and hop-up chamber stock. For the parts I changed out are, I changed out the stock piston with a Maddog full metal tooth rack piston, a JG piston head and O-ring, SHS 13:1 gears with the sector delayer chip, I changed out the stock M120 spring with an M100 spring for CQB. I changed out the stock Aries motor to a Matrix high torque motor, which is not that much high torque since it's 16 or 18 TPA. And I changed out the stock bucking to a G&G Green Bucking. For the modifications I've done to the gun, I've corrected the AOE by adding a spacer in between the piston and piston head. And I added a few foam pads and glued them onto the cylinder head. And that's almost perfect AOE. I've switched cheese the piston because I was using a G&P high-speed M120 motor, and that got like 30 RPS, and I did that to avoid PME. But I switched over to the Matrix high torque for a bit more trigger response in CQB. So this doesn't really do much, and it gives like +1 RPS. I've radiused the gearbox shell to prevent it from cracking. I've shortened the trigger pull by bending this piece of metal right here on the Mircoswitch. So you just need to tap the trigger if it would want to work. That. Very short trigger pull and very snappy trigger. I've did precocking on the gun. So usually there's this sensor right there, the magnet sensor. Usually the magnet's right here. So when the gun cycles and it releases the piston, and it stops right there in semi. But I've moved the magnet so when it cycles, it stops right there in semi. So when I pull the trigger again, it's already precocked. I've added spacers to the spring guide because by correcting the AOE and adding those two spacers, it reduces the FPS a bit, especially when using the M100 spring. So to account for that, I put a few spacers on the spring guide, and that gets it right up to 300 FPS for CQB. And the hop up, I've got Teflon tape and taped around the bucking for good air seal and consistency, and also minimizes the wobble. And that's all the modifications I've done to the gearbox. Alright guys, we are going to be shooting the targets at a semi-rested position from about 32 feet away. And the targets I'm going to be shooting are the 3 evac targets, which are about the size of a pop can, and the low recycling symbol on the Domino's pizza box. And the SR16 shoots at about 300 FPS and 20 RPS, give or take. Let's get started. Alright guys, that was the shooting test. And overall, this gun is actually pretty accurate. I wouldn't say it's an absolute laser beam, but as you can see, the groupings are pretty tight. That's about like 5 centimeters, like between each shot. And that full auto is pretty fast too with the 13 to 1 years. Thank you for watching my video. See you guys next time.